Hello, good evening, and thanks again for another edition of Ideas Exchange. This is TVXYZ, and the program, obviously, you know, is about conversations around things that border our country. Tonight, we want to talk about Ghana, and of course, we'll also be talking about one of the biggest political parties in this country, which can form government at any time. An old man had a conversation with me yesterday, and he virtually said Ghana is on the verge of collapse. I penciled down some of the key issues he used, and one was about the fact that issues affecting our country today are hydra-headed, which means they have several angles that border anybody who has Ghana at heart. He talks about the Galamsey fight we are losing, ritual murders which appear to be on the increase. It talks about public confidence in government, the executive, which appear to have been lost. And he was drawing this concern from what happened last weekend when a group of young people who were naturally having fun spontaneously hooted at the president, signifying the level of disappointment or anger in the system. He also made reference to the state of the economy. Remember, Fitch, which is one of the rating agencies, obviously suggested that we are now more than junk when we want to talk about the status of a country. Then he also talked about the reluctance of government to listen to any opposition figure who has ideas about how we can collectively look at our problems, offer solutions, implement them, get collective buy-in to look at how best we can change the narrative from where we are today. And then he also talks about a polarized country, which is further being influenced by actions of the Electoral Commission, which may not trigger well as far as interests are concerned and the peace of this country. And that old man is an octogenarian, and one of the things he talked about was a country where it appears our early statesmen are sitting on the fence or may have been influenced in one way or the other and are not talking. Tonight, I want to have this conversation outside the studios. We are in the home of one of the respected female politicians of this country. She is on record as the first female Attorney General and Minister of Justice. It may ring a bell. And she is also, from my checks, the first vice chairperson of the biggest opposition party, which is the NDC. She is Madam Betty Mould Idrisu. She's my guest tonight, and our conversation, obviously, as you have known in the past and whenever she speaks, will be very exciting. Madam, you are welcome, and thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you.
Right, for those of you who may want to know a little about Madam Mould Idrisu, I will share them with you any moment from now. But Madam, when you look at our country today, a democracy which is expected to be growing after 1992, if you single out Kwame Nkrumah's regime and then we take away all the military regimes, you'd realize that we had the Jerry Rawlings, J. Kufuor, we had the late Professor John Evans Atamels, may his soul rest in peace, we have John Dramani Mahama, and today's Nana Akufo-Addo. When you sit back and reflect as one of our stateswomen, what goes through your mind?
I feel very privileged to have been born under the Kwame Nkrumah regime. I was born in a colonial, and then we transformed into a post-colonial era. And I'm privileged because I've seen it all theoretically, and not quite done it all, but seen it all, lived through all the various phases of Ghana's governance. Let us take away the military regimes, because I am a lawyer and I believe in constitutionalism. I also believe in democracy. And there was no one happier than myself when in 1992 His Excellency, our late leader, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, gave expression to the 1992 Constitution of Ghana by inviting a diverse number of people who had never before been thought to be part of constitution making. And you might say, herein lies some of the problems that we are having. So I find that Ghana, we have always been in the vanguard, we have always been in the forefront through these different constitutional and regime changes. I've always been an Nkrumahist. That was what I was born into and raised as, and then luckily for me, married into and formed a political career out of. It's the party, the tradition of which I'm the proudest. And I think the most achievements in Ghana in terms of the people of Ghana have been under Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and Professor John Evans Atta Mills and John Dramani Mahama. This, to me, has been the epoch of Ghana, and I stand by it.
And when you sit back and you look at the narratives, the mood among people who may want to speak out and express their views, and you want to look at where we sit as a country which appears a bit polarized than it was before now, do you feel worried?
Of course I'm worried. I'm desperately worried, not only by the economic situation, but by the fact that we are now in an era where the basic provisions of our constitution is hardly respected. You talk about journalism, the media, you talk about freedom of expression, you talk about people being detained or thrown, into
arbitrary arrest.
Arbitrarily. And you find in some of the instances our judiciary being compromised. And I'm wondering that where from this, in the less than, 6 years of the MPP2, where from this? Even under President Kufuor, we did not see this. And I would have very much doubted this downslide so soon under a renowned international human rights lawyer as our president of the Republic of Ghana currently. So I'm bitterly disappointed and I'm devastated for the people of Ghana. And I think that we have an opportunity to do things right by in the next democratic change, in the next democratic dispensation.
All right. So my guest tonight is Madam Betty Mould Idrisu. And of course, for those who have just joined us, I want to share with you a little that you may not know. If you are a young man in your 20s or maybe early 30s, you perhaps may have missed a lot that you would have known about this lady. Betty Na Ekwia Mould Idrisu is still a respected Ghanaian lawyer, a leading member of the NDC, has served as Minister of Education, that was from 2011 to 2012, and then also served as Ghana's first female Attorney General and Minister of Justice from 2009 to 2011. Prior to politics, she had been the head of legal and constitutional affairs at the Commonwealth Secretariat in London. A former student of Ghana International School, so it tells you maybe she grew up with a golden spoon.
I wish, from British Accra.
Are you sure you don't wish?
I know what I'm talking about.
She is a former student of the Ghana International School, Achimota School, Accra Academy, University of Ghana, Legon. That was between 1973 and 1976, and had master's degree, which she gained in 1978 from the London School of Economics. It tells you about the tall background when you want to talk about academic achievements. In 2003, for example, Madame Betty Mould Idrisu was appointed the Director of the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Division of the Commonwealth Secretariat an intergovernmental organization comprising of the 53 member states based in London. And then she also oversaw the implementation of the Secretariat's programs on anti-corruption, asset recovery, and judicial ethics. Our conversation obviously will touch on her experience at the Attorney General's Department and a few things that we are witnessing in our country today. But because she is still a leading and influential member of the biggest opposition party, that is the NDC, we'll spend the next few minutes talk about her party, and then when we finish with that, we'll focus on national issues that are of interest to you. Auntie Betty, when you sit back and you look at the NDC that has been nurtured from 1992 till date, how do you feel? Is it ready to grab power in 2024?
Power is surely coming to us. We don't need to grab it. It is coming to us. I keep saying this to the youth, that when the people of Ghana are determined behind a choice, nothing anyone can do can stop them. And this is what is happening. The party is ready. We are poised. We were ready in 2020, and unfortunately, victory was snatched from us. I can assure you that the party is in excellent shape, and we know exactly what we are doing moving forward into the path towards internal elections, electing our flag bearer, and getting ourselves and the whole country ready for our victory in 2020.
No, so at this stage, what kind of leadership does the NDC need at the party level, taking into considerations lessons from previous elections, people occupying sensitive positions, electioneering campaign, sometimes which become very challenging? What should inform choices?
I think strategy, wisdom, believe it or not, the wisdom of the youth, strategy, youthful wisdom, and unity in the party towards our march and getting the party ready for victory in 2024. Look, this party has been a party which has been forged out of fire. And we are not a party that has been brought up in the elitist, rarefied stratosphere. No, we are a party from the people. Our basic unit is that of the branch, and the branches are coterminous to the polling stations, coterminous to the people resident at the polling stations. The cadres, the women, the youth are all adequately compensated and adequately represented in over 37,000 branches in the country. And so we pride ourselves on being a party from the base. Sometimes that can be difficult when you want to make decisions and be holistic and, you know, in approach. But I think that that's the challenge.
But do you sometimes feel that that steam is lost?
Not at all. I don't think you have been to the grounds recently. I rather feel overwhelmed when I go to my village in the Ashanti region, and the Ashanti region, to see the enthusiasm. We were there for various aspects leading up to the internal elections, you know, the outreach programs, the audit exercises, the familiarization tours. I was in several regions.
Right.
And I'm telling you that the people themselves are ready for not for the change, but for what they know should come their way. They know that there were problems in 2020, and being in opposition can be very hard, as the MPP also knew. They went into an election without a general secretary, without a chairman, and yet they won. You know, so leadership is there, but once the people are behind you, I think that we will see for ourselves what we have tried to do. Some of us have spent a long time and a lot of energy on trying to keep up the front and trying to ensure that the basic the basic information is portrayed. the biggest challenge of any political party is the youth. And I think that is where NDC, we started off from the youth. Jerry John Rawlings was always about the youth. And I think that we need to take that a step further.
Now, that sounds very interesting, of course, to your party members, very assuring, and of course, also instructive going into the elections, especially at the regional and the national level, when you want to look at the youth front. But if you reflect and go back to the 90s, there are some prominent names that will stand tall in the history of NDC. The late Dr. Kwabene Jays, Ama Benua Does, today's Hudu Yaya, very old but still strong, Dobeda Samuels, names like Haruna Edrisu, who was face of the youth front of the NDC at that time. And of course, people like you who look young but old, or old but young, I don't know how you want to put it. And of course, your husband is the chairman of the Council of Elders of the NDC. Now, when you look at the crop of people who saw the in and out of the NDC, 92, 2000, 2008, 2016, and so on, and especially because you are in a position where the party is struggling with a party that wants to break the 8. What do you think should influence the kind of people we want to see your party bring out, which will reflect the NDC people have known?
Number one, I don't think we are struggling with their struggle to break the 8. I don't think, I think that under a democratic dispensation like Ghana, we've seen a lot of things. Personally, if you ask me, I would have said that the presidency should have been for 5 years. Having worked with the late Professor Mills, I realized that 4 years may be a bit short for a presidency, but this is my own personal view, and I think you see it in countries like France and the others. First year you are coming to term, second, third, fourth years, that's when you should have the vim and the vigor to implement your policies. But this is not the case here. We see that the youth are the base of the party. You talk about Haruna. Do you know at what age Haruna started in NDC?
You know, you can tell us.
Exactly. He was in university. Alhaji Hudu Yaya, you call him elderly, but Hudu for me is my junior counsel.
Wow.
You understand? He started very early, straight. He was made a regional minister, I believe, a secretary at that time. So we've always believed in the youth, and we've always believed in that way forward. I think that it's a little more work that we have to do to be able to get there. And we have these names you called, I see them today reflected in the party. I don't want to articulate
the names of people who may still be wanting to.
We have George Opariado, who's the youth organizer, who's an extremely influential person amongst the youth. We have somebody who's competing with him for youth organizer, also Broda Jemfi, who's
very
also
active.
Very active, writes very well, very articulate. And then you have Sami Jemfi. You know, both Opariado and Sami Jemfi, they are both lawyers who cut their teeth virtually on NDC and were propelled to the national front, you know, by NDC. George was a former MCE in the Eastern region. Sami is a bit too young to have, you know, benefited from that. But he worked in the Ashanti region, I think, with Kojo Bunsu at that time.
As an assistant.
Exactly. So I'm saying that we have the youth. These names I've called, they resonate with you. And you see them in our NDC leadership. And I think that it's important to see the elderly who are still there. You know, you saw some of them at the recent press conference, guiding, and when the youth see them, they are inspired. They know that, wow, the seniors are still with us. We can be just like
but
them.
It sounds very interesting. You sound optimistic because circumstances today may want to give you hope about what you want to see going forward into a major election. But there's one caveat that always has to do with how political parties manage internal elections. Now, when you look at names being rumored or persons who are already showing interest, especially at the regional and national level, where sometimes there's evidence to show that when it is not properly managed, it leads to cracks within the party, feet dragging and so on. Do you look like somebody who should be worried among those who are concerned?
To me, and maybe it's because of my age, I feel the same concerns we've had. For example, I'll tell you that when reform happened, we were devastated as a party.
That was when Professor Tamils
was declared in 2000.
the running mate.
Yes.
Right.
You know, when reform happened, we felt devastated as a party. But what do we see today? The leaders of reform came back and even they contested for national positions. They are most revered.
And even at the presidential slot.
Yes, and at the president. And they are, we look up to them. We don't distrust them or mistrust them. There are cracks in every political party. I just said the MPP won without a general secretary and the chairman.
And the chairman.
At that time. I'm not saying that we will do the same, but I keep telling people who are very anxious that look, there's nothing that will break this party. We've seen it all, and we just have to be calm. This is the period of internal jostling. I welcome it, because if you know how the base is charged up, at the thought of having democratic elections to elect those that they want to lead them, you'll be amazed.
What is your take about the women's front of an NDC post the Nana Konadu Ajuman Rawlinses, the Sherry Aites, Faustina Nelsons? You were in there, and today's female or women front in the party. What do you expect to see going forward? What are concerns you want to frankly churn out?
Well, number one, I'm still there as a national executive member, as the chair of the NDC legal committee.
Right.
So I'm still very much involved in a lot of activities in the party, almost daily. And Sherry is still there. She's one of the vice chairpersons. And what I would love to see is having more women mainstreamed throughout the party. For instance, having women and organizers, having a woman contest for national organizer. I want women to be able to reach the ultimate height.
Is it the fancy of occupying a position, or the vibrant, outspoken, bold women in leadership of your party, like the Ama Benyuados, the late? I'm citing her particularly because she's not with us, and therefore it will not sound like you are being biased towards mentioning names. We don't seem to have that today.
Wow.
Do we?
I'm shocked to hear you saying that, because I think we have the deputy organizer, deputy general secretary, Barbara. I'm not shy to mention Barbara, who is from my region, from Ashanti region. She's a vibrant, lawyer, and she's been in the 4 of elections for the last, since I've known her, which is about 15, 20 years now. And there are Obobia, Obokudaku is there. You have,
So there are women out there.
Wow, there are women. Well, and they are there on the ground.
Okay, unfortunately, this is not about, the whole hour is not about the NDC and what Madam Betty Moji-Drisu sees about her political party, but obviously because they are going into elections, it will be worthy of having a feel of how the party is thinking through ahead of their December 17th National Congress. We'll be taking a break. When we come back, we will focus on national issues, from the economy to the judiciary to how you feel and what you want to hear from Auntie Betty. I'll be back shortly.
Welcome to Auto Check Vehicle Diagnostic and Licensing Center. I hear my car can be checked here without going to so many or Accra.
Sure. Emission, check.
Alignment, check.
Brakes, check.
Visit Auto Checks at Koforodia Aquadum Road for the roadworthiness of your vehicle, from saloon cars to heavy-duty industrial vehicles. Madam, your car is now ready for the road.
Thank you so much. Auto checks, check.
Auto Checks, your safety, our priority.
Check, auto checks.
Notes lately I've been drifting aimlessly. Bids, the actual retail price is...
Cine, exclusively on HG Plus channel 115.
If I cry na menyisika, edia ye mefui.
Ehin fa na menya bosia, edia tre medwuma yimu.
Kai kra mabre, me busia ato taxi fofo. Suhum Rural Bank.
Suhum Rural Bank.
Yamamwakwa baba Suhum Rural Bank. Ya wonhyehyɛ ahodoɔ bi te sɛ dwadifo abosia, ekuokuro bosia, susu account, enidaso wɔ hɔ savings account, mebada chain savings account, ene de keka ho. Press Suhum Rural Bank was 034229186. Na won so wetumi aka sɛ
Suhum Rural Bank ama ene mayeka owner.
Suhum Rural Bank enti me pa minie.
Suhum Rural Bank, growing our heritage.
Welcome back. This is Ideas Exchange, and tonight our guest is Madam Betty Mould Idrisu. She is a household name when we talk about politics in Ghana, especially because of the role she played as our first Attorney General and Minister of Justice. She is an influencer, and of course, many young women look up to people like her to take lessons about how they can mold their future. On this program tonight, we want to use the next half to speak about Ghana. And because Madam Betty Mould Idrisu has been a former Attorney General, she, in my estimation, must be a member of the Ghana Bar Association, and of course has also played various roles in shaping policy formulations when it comes to legal matters. My first take will be how she feels about a polarized bar, a perceived, not too strict, but a very controversial judiciary. How she feels about it. Madam, when you hear all these back and forth, of course, recently the former president was passionate about his concerns, reflecting the views of Ghanaians, as he put it. And then we also had the reaction from the president and, of course, the current Attorney General, Governor Dami. Having occupied that seat before and listening to how the response came, how did you take it?
Very unfortunate for a young Attorney General like Godfrey Dami to come out with such statements about our former president, disrespectful, and it was very upsetting to me, having held that position before. I try to forgive him because I'm Christian and it's an act of charity, but I think that almost everybody has put him in his proper place. And the and being the leader of the bar when you are the Attorney General does not give you the right to use the Ghana Bar Association meeting to create such chaos. And our lawyers felt extremely upset and saddened by this. You mentioned the conference, you mentioned the Bar Association. Let me talk personally. I have not paid my dues at the Ghana Bar Association for the last 10 years. I've never had much faith in the Ghana Bar Association because of its capacity to withstand external shocks when that are happening in a nation's governance. We saw them at critical times during our governance period. When they should have spoken out, they didn't, because they were favoring one political party or the other. I could pay my dues anytime I want to if I feel that the Ghana Bar Association is going to be not in my seat, but is going to be a true arbiter of the interest of all lawyers in Ghana. You spoke of John Dramani Mahama's, His Excellency's remarks at the conference of the lawyers of the NDC. I chaired that conference, and we were enthusiastically in support of him and his remarks about the perception of Ghanaians' waning confidence in the judiciary of Ghana. Look, Article 125 of the Constitution says quite clearly that the justice, the administration of justice, is vested in the people of the Republic of Ghana, and it is the judiciary who is to administer justice for us. If you don't listen to the people, how on earth can you administer justice for us? They need to listen to us. This should be a wake-up call. His Excellency was asking for them to look within, to do an to be introverted, and look at their performance and look at what is being said by various public surveys. Talk to the people themselves and find out what their perception of the judiciary is. It is sad to see and hear of that barrage of unjustifiable criticism that was leveled at the former president. And I want to tell you that the hundreds of lawyers who attended that conference, each and every one of them supported what he said. And it's not because we are NDC. It's because 99% of them practice at the bar. They go to the courts daily, and they know what is happening in the courts. Yet they are afraid to talk. Many of them might be afraid to talk because it will affect their professional capacity to practice.
Now, it sounds quite worrying. For me, as an observer, I get the intuition that we may soon, if it is not addressed today, have a polarized association, be it Ghana Bar Association or the Judicial Service, taking into consideration the resurgence of the Law Society of Ghana and recent comments about whether the Speaker actually said he's withdrawn from the GB and so on. Now, because you are an active lawyer, it should be of interest to you to see how this can be addressed going forward. What do you see?
Oh, I think it will play itself out. The Ghana Bar Association has always been polarized. Most of the time it's been polarized. I have told our base or our groupings of those who are members of the NDC. They also have members of the MPP who are, key members of the Ghana Bar Association. We hold nothing against anybody.
So it is the action of the leadership of the association that raises questions. That's what I get from the commentary you are making.
It's inaction most of the time of the leadership of the GBA that's towards certain people, certain members of the bar from a different political persuasion to some of them. that can raise questions or concern. You must do everything fairly and equally if you are, truly representatives for us, for our interests as lawyers.
Now, your profile is enough for us to share with those watching TVXYZ on this particular program, Ideas Exchange, that you understand our laws, legal education, and so on and so forth. Over the past few years, there's been issues about legal education, perceived discrimination, deliberate actions to take away some groups of people to have easy access. And just recently, I've read some literature suggesting that 2 members of parliament, Roxanne Dafamakbo and the MP for Medina, who are going to table a private members bill, which actually will seek a total overhaul of the General Legal Council. Do you subscribe to this?
100%.
Why?
Even though I haven't studied the contents of the private members bill yet. As Attorney General, you are a member of the General Legal Council, which, to my shock and horror, actually oversees Ghana's legal education and the School of Law at Mokala at that time. That was the only existing School of Law when I was Attorney General.
Did you do anything differently at that time?
Yes, we managed to get 2 other law schools put into place then. During my tenure as Attorney General, a lot has shocked me about the Ghana legal education system, not the personalities involved, but the archaic nature of Ghana's legal education. We need to move forward. We need to break it, and we need to come into this century with it. It's based on old, antiquated UK regulations and rules that don't have any relevance.
No, but if you look at the people in there, they seem to be entrenched. The Chief Justice, the Attorney General, people holding key positions don't want to change. And these are young people.
I don't even know why government is part of Ghana's legal education. In fact, up to now, I don't understand it. Whatever they say, I don't see what we have to do with it. And I don't see why legal education in Ghana cannot be like America, where you just go and sit a series of exams, which can be electronic, you don't attend any course, and you pass or you fail. I mean, it's as simple as all of that. It's the UK system that involves, you being called, well, America too, you are called to the bar. But I'm just saying that we are completely antiquated. And if you know the frustrations of the law students, your heart will break. I have obviously...
They speak to you?
All the time. And in my position when I was Attorney General, and up to now, every day there's a new heartache. Some have been compelled, when they've had resources, to go abroad, to do even to Gambia. And Gambia, where we were sending them judges, and lawyers. When I was at the Commonwealth, we were sending Ghanaian trained judges and lawyers there. Even there, our students have to go there. We cannot continue like this. I just heard that there was
exam leakage. Right.
I can't believe
and it happens all the time.
No, but in my time, I'm sorry, it couldn't have happened.
What could be the reason for this?
I thought that the reason was the number of Ghana cedis that they were calling that people were charging.
Right.
But the reason is because it is antiquated. There are loopholes. It needs to be changed. Every Chief Justice will know that I've expressed this forcibly to any Chief Justice I have ever met, that the whole system has to change. There must be some regulation, but not the way it is.
Now, what do you think about governance today? Because some would say Ghana is sitting on a time bomb. Are you scared for our future?
Are you talking about the economy or about governance?
Governance. We'll talk about the economy, right?
The fact that we have a problem with our constitution, during my time as Attorney General with the late President Mills, we initiated the Constitutional Review Commission. And I think we all know where that report has gone. Precisely nowhere, nowhere over the last decade. That is the main problem we have. If we could have had the courage as a nation, both NDC and MPP, to look at the Constitution and not tinker with the parts that we think are helpful to us as a government at any particular time, but look at it, realize that it was written by human beings and there are basic deficiencies in it, and correct those. The first is the overwhelming powers given to the executive. Herein, you see a judiciary which should not be the way it is. Why can't we criticize the judiciary? Look at America. Look at what is happening there in the Roe versus Wade issue, which left me personally as one of the saddest people, remembering when Roe versus Wade was passed and the euphoria of women everywhere. In my lifetime, to see Roe versus Wade overturned, I spoke to a number of my friends, American professors, and they were devastated. And look at the protests that came, and it is still going on, at the decision of the Supreme Court. We are not disrespecting the Supreme Court when we criticize them. We are saying that we don't agree with you. This is the people you are dispensing justice for. The people say they don't agree with you. Allow it. Every lawyer who doesn't agree with them is hauled before the General Legal Counsel Disciplinary Committee. This cannot continue. We cannot continue this way. They must be open.
Is it a recipe for chaos? I'm asking this question deliberately because of the role you have played at the apex body with the eyeball seen with the oversight responsibility on these key arms under the Attorney General's department.
It was a privileged position. I can tell you that the Chief Justices are in a very difficult position, but you must have that independence of mind in order to execute your administrative and judicial decisions fairly. And it's when the perception comes about that you are not independent-minded, and that is coming about because of certain actions which are well known by certain elements in the judiciary, then we have a problem.
What has brought us this far? Because some would say...
I've told you, it's the Constitution.
No, the Constitution...
We have a little problem there.
Yes.
If we rectify it, and if we continue our democratic dispensation, i.e. the government not being big brother, not clamping down on allowing the people of Ghana to exercise what is their rights under the Constitution, I think we will see a different kind of Ghana.
I was asking the question based on the perception that other influential bodies who could have a say to press home further this call for constitutional review appear to be sitting on the fence. It could be the Council of State, or civil society organizations, the clergy, or any group who could have added their voice to a few people who are championing this cause in spite of the frustrations.
I think you have seen increasingly a deafening silence of more and more of our revered bodies. And I think herein lies the answer, that they also need to come out and realize that they are serving the good people of Ghana. Ghanaian, I'm a woman, I'm the first female Attorney General, I'm this, I'm that. So maybe I'm talking politics here, but I'm speaking from many years of experience and saying that we must listen. You can't always be on top or above everybody. You must bring your ears down and listen. No. The booing of the crowds, they claimed that was orchestrated by NDC. I ask you, who would believe that? And yet, seriously, the MPP propagandists were coming out with such statements when it was quite clear that the young people didn't think it was an appropriate time for the president to say anything there at that forum. It's their forum. Why are you coming to say anything?
What does this signify?
They don't want him. They didn't want to hear him. They didn't want to, they just want to.
But some would say it signifies the growing lack of confidence, perhaps either in government or in politicians or the executive. Do you subscribe with that?
We're not talking about that. We're talking about one person they booed. It was one person they were booing at. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about the growing lack of confidence in the person they were booing at. These were young people. And nobody could have organized them in that way. I didn't even know there was such a festival going on until my daughter said she was going. She was going there. I had no idea of the kind of, environment that it was. And I was taken aback that our young people were able to do this, to give expression to what is going on. What's the young people are going through a very difficult situation. I wouldn't want to be a young person in Ghana today. I wouldn't want to go to university, struggle your way through a now somewhat chaotic educational system, get to university. Today I was at Legon and they were saying all undergraduate students must leave the campus, otherwise police would come and clear them out, the security. Wow, this is the university.
But you have been a minister for education before. Do you find it surprising?
I found it shocking. And I'm also a proud Viking, a member of Mensa Saba Hall. Equally as shocking that I found, the actions of some.
Because in our time, I remember you could stay during the holidays on campus, yes, because you paid for the hostel. Yes, so, but why would it happen today? Is it not because of the demonstrations, the criminal activities that we are witnessing on campuses these days?
But are the criminal activities by students? There are not only students staying there any longer. There are all kinds of elements, apparently, that have infiltrated. It's sad to see the deterioration of the justice system, the education system, the governance system. And I'm not going to give you the glib assurances of all politicians. Together, I think, we can make it come, we can make it right again. But it's a long road towards reaching the ultimate goal.
Now, when NDC wins the 2024 elections, there's no doubt that you play an influential role in that government. If you look at the level of joblessness, galamsey fight, lack of public interest in what government does because of mistrust and so on, do you foresee difficult times ahead?
I never foresaw this. I never foresaw that Ghana would be in such a difficult situation. Going to the IMF, okay, that's no big deal. I mean, they made it a big deal. They made it a political mantra. But it's not a big deal. I understand it's the 17th time that Ghana has gone to the IMF. But having reached this low in terms of almost everything in our economy and seeing the value of the cedi tumble, depreciate so fast, and seeing people now getting anxious about their monies in the bank, pensions, this, that, it's very frightening. And we hope that with the IMF here to restructure, our government will finally be able to impose fiscal discipline on themselves. They should discipline themselves and let us put Ghana back on track, so that when we take over in 2024, our job will not be as hard as...
my guest tonight is Madam Betty Mould Idrisu. Everybody knows her as Auntie Betty. She was our Attorney General, Minister of Justice. We know she plays very key role in the organization or reorganization of the NDC at the grassroots level. Anytime the party has to go back and then work out their notes. We want to look at another very sensitive topic that will continue to pend until resolutions are found. And it's about the activities of the Electoral Commission and the National Identification Authority. The Constitution is clear, and I don't have to tell you what is in there because you are a lawyer, former AG, and you know it better than me. But the EC appears to be overspeeding with a CI that may breach that Constitution, and nobody is too sure about how Parliament may be able to block it if what the NDC is saying is right. How does this come to you?
It makes me very sad. Actually, I'm very sad. What can I say? Because it's an embarrassing situation to be in as a country where we have the EC, the head of the EC Commission, as a lawyer and as a woman.
So she's a woman like you?
Those are my former students. What you didn't mention is that I taught at the University of Ghana's law faculty.
Oh, that I didn't add, but she has always been. And so congrats for the role you have played in influencing legal... right, good.
So I know a good crop of today's younger generation of leaders. You talk about the CI. As I said, I find it sad because I believe this is yet another example of how the Constitution needs to be changed. We cannot just present a bill and then a CI and then...
You count days and then it automatically matures.
I mean, when it goes against every constitutional dispensation, you know, in the 1992 Constitution. God, this is a basic... You know, it's so clear that if you are a Ghanaian citizen above the age of 18 years, you have the right to vote. And instead, we are being told or, you know, we are being given everything else but what is in the Constitution. And the place we can go to for redress, we know will not listen to us, will not entertain us. So it's very difficult for people like myself to advise the younger generation on what is the way forward. You know, we are hoping that when the CI gets to the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee, they will do what is right and not enable such a bill. I believe Dr. Afarijan came out with some very wise sayings on it. And we are all in discussions and seeing the way forward on this issue.
Now, we are wrapping up. I just want you to look at your camera and speak to Ghanaians as a former AG, the youth, in fact, government today, because we all agree that we have a crisis that needs all hands on deck. What would you tell Ghanaians? That's your camera.
My fellow Ghanaians, especially women of Ghana, and especially young women of Ghana, I would say that don't let's sit down unconcerned. A lot of us do. And I'm not saying that social media is the only way to express yourself. I tell my colleague female lawyers that write, put things down in writing, express yourselves. Don't be afraid. Come out and stand up for what you believe should be the norm in society. Today we are seeing too many things that are not right, that are not just, that are not going to give Ghana the way forward, that are not going to give you as young people, as young women, they are not going to give you the appropriate impetus to excel in society. So please, no one should be afraid. I encourage us all to come out. People look at me and say, oh, as for you, Auntie Betty, you are not afraid of anything. Yes, I am. But when it comes to what is right and what is just, I always try and say my mind. And I encourage you all to do the same. And of course, to vote for NDC in 2024.
And that's how we wrap up. Of course, I know being an active member of the NDC, she is not going to end this program without any comment. But let me ask this before we wrap up. Your husband is the chairman of the Council of Elders of the NDC. Yes. You are...
I'm just the National Executive Council
okay.
member.
When you go to bed, do you think about NDC or you think about Ghana or you think about your children?
We think about all of them.
Okay. Of course, that's how I wrap up on a light note. And of course, those of you who have known Auntie Betty, she's very, very simple, very outspoken. And I remember when she was an Attorney General, anytime she spoke, people would say, brofo. And of course, today you've heard a little of the brofo from our old Auntie Betty. I see her very young. She says she's almost 70, but looks like 45. But that's how we wrap up this is Ideas Exchange. Thanks to the production team. Don't forget, tomorrow, Thursday, between 1 and 2 p.m., there will be a repeat broadcast of this program. My name is Ahianyo. Good night.